Welcome to the PACE webinar series presented by Benchmark Portal, everyone. Next slide, please. I'm Bruce Belfiore, CEO of Benchmark Portal, and these webinars are the fruit of our partnership with PACE that focuses on operational issues of importance to contact center managers. Topics were selected through a survey of PACE members and reflect the areas in which you said you wanted to hear the results of research and best practice observations from our experts. What we do in these webinars is to mix the research data plus practical, boots-on-the-ground advice, which we think will be of interest to you, our listeners. Next slide, please. Before we start on today's topic, which highlights supervisors, a couple of quick announcements I've been asked to convey from PACE. First of all, the June monthly compliance webinar has been canceled. The Akron, Ohio regional meeting is slated for June 19th, so website for additional information on that. And then there's also going to be an exciting event on medical marijuana and employer rights and responsibilities. That's going to be on Thursday, June 20th, and that's available to PACE members only, and you can look online for some more information on that. And the other thing is that there's the Washington Summit at the Intercontinental on the Wharf, September 22nd to 24th. For more information on the PACE Washington Summit, visit www.pacesummit.com to learn more. Some of the things that you'll be able to do there include direct access to policymakers affecting the contact center industry, have a better understanding of legislative issues and trends, and also understand strategies for navigating the maze of regulatory issues regarding customer engagement and contact centers that we all face. So, second, we remind you that the PACE Benchmark Portal partnership also brings you great on-demand operational training offerings for all levels of contact center professionals, including Q&A management certification courses. Next slide, please. Here you can see the excellent discounts that are available to members of PACE on a broad range of courses that range from the management level through quality assurance, coaching for performance, FM, supervisor, and agent soft skill. All of these available to you. And next slide, currently the PACE members can get the first on-demand license by contacting us at Benchmark Portal directly and asking to sign up. It's a great opportunity for those PACE members who would like to learn more about supervisor training or another area of management without having to travel. Okay, next slide. Stay on this slide actually. Let's jump right into our topic of the day, which is on supervisors, the keys to call center performance. Next slide, please. I'm joined by my colleagues, Dee Buell and Debbie Frazier, both of them great veterans of MetLife contact center operations, and both of them with lots of best practices experience as supervisors themselves and as managers of dozens of supervisors, tons of supervisors. So they've broadened their knowledge of the supervisor role through their consulting and training activities since leaving MetLife. So they really bring together the understanding of that role, both in terms of first person actually doing it, to managing it, to consulting on it, and to training on it. So they really bring a wealth of experience here. Welcome, Dee. We'll welcome you first and then welcome Debbie.
Thanks so much. This is Debbie. Thanks so much for having us. We look forward to presenting some of the information regarding supervisors and any questions you have at the end.
Okay, very good. And Dee, you're with us, correct? We hope Dee.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. That's great.
Okay.
Well, let me hand things over to you, Dee. And I know you'll begin by framing the supervisor's place within the organizational hierarchy. So over to you, Dee.
Okay, first of all, I wanted to start by showing the organizational structure within a call center. And the supervisors play a very important role in the leadership team. They're responsible for helping the company meet their goals and objectives, as well as they're the first line management. And depending on the company's structure, their titles may vary. They may be called a supervisor, a team leader, and sometimes even a manager. And they're the main influence of the agent's performance. The supervisors should be an advocate for the frontline agents by creating an environment and a culture that keeps the agents involved and engaged in the business. The supervisor is also known to be the most technical in the organization. And one of the things that I wanted to point out here is you can see from this list of responsibilities, a supervisor is accountable for a wide range of responsibilities. They're known to be the one with the most technical skills, so oftentimes they are asked to be involved in other areas of the business. But their primary role is to recruit and hire, to train the agents. They're to ensure that the agent understands and complies with the call center objectives and performance standards. They answer the agent's questions and on the processes, and regardless of whether it be a process in the business or a process in HR, whatever it is, they are expected to know the answers for the agents. They also take complaint calls. They are very instrumental in identifying operational issues and suggesting improvements for workflow. They're accountable for monitoring agent calls, and they evaluate the agent's performance. And most of the time, they are the one that does the coaching as well. But it doesn't stop there. They also support management by analyzing data to assist management in reaching their call center goals. They prepare reports for leadership, and they work with other supervisors and other departments within the organization to support the agents and also to increase customer satisfaction. They know the most about the company, its systems, its policies, and all that. So with that being said, they not only are accountable for the responsibilities of managing the agents, but also supporting leadership. So where do we get supervisors that are qualified to do all these multiple tasks? We find it can really be challenging to hire good qualified call center employees, but it's even more difficult to find qualified leaders. In a survey across the call center industry, there were 3 main channels for finding qualified candidates for a supervisor role. Often, they're promoted from another department within the company. Almost 50% of companies also hire from outside the company to meet specific skill needs. And nearly 81% of the companies promote high-performing agents who show leadership skills. And that's probably one of the reasons why they are so knowledgeable of the business, because they've been on the front lines. Now, regardless of where you get your qualified supervisors, it's very, very important that they're properly trained for their new role. Most companies are not ready to meet today's leadership needs. And due to budget constraints, formal contact center supervisor training just isn't a priority. As we saw in the previous slide, 81% of companies hire supervisors who have technical skills and an agent. But a successful supervisor needs leadership skills as well. So let's just take a look at some of the tools that are being used in the interview process. We see that 88.2% of companies say that they do use behavioral-based interviews. And of course, this is a best practice. You're asking the interviewee to share examples of how they handled specific situations in their previous life. 88% of companies indicate that they do behavioral-based interviews, but only 29% screen for coaching skills. And only 38% screen for behavioral skills. As a frontline leader, these 2 areas are so critical to their success and should be trained and should be interviewed for. When we look at what formal training usually looks like, 90% of the formal training is around HR policies, and that's very good. It's needed. 83% is around the technology. 83% coaching, 74% on the quality assurance and calibration process. And of course, you still need to understand how to create those reports for management. But as frontline management, the supervisors need to understand that people management must be consistent across all teams, not only to comply with state and federal regulations, but also with company policies and procedures around the employees. When we look at the technical side, you have to have in-depth training around the telephones, the computers, and so forth. In order to answer all those questions, the agents are going to come to you because they look to you as the expert. And of course, quality and coaching are key elements for leading and mentoring your team and should be trained for a much deeper level of understanding. In many companies, the formal training is done on the job. A new supervisor would have an outline of the different areas of training and work with seasoned leaders who can not only share the policy and procedure, but also conduct side-by-side training as well. When we ask about annual training, supervisors should continue to be trained to make sure they're current with leadership techniques. And only 50% of company surveys indicate their supervisors receive more than 10 hours of training a year. 23% have less than 5 hours of training. If annual training isn't part of your business plan for supervisors, it should be strongly considered. Well-trained supervisors can be the strength of your contact center. When we look at how they're paid, supervisors oftentimes are eligible for bonus and incentive based on their individual performance. 62.5% of companies say that they do pay for performance. So this really is a best practice. It focuses attention on the goals and ties some pay back to those results. Now, some companies pay yearly incentive based on department results, but many call centers pay monthly or quarterly incentives for specific metrics that are key performance requirements. And this keeps everyone focused on meeting or exceeding the specific metric. You know, we've talked a lot about the responsibilities of a supervisor, but their communication skills is essential. And there's actually 4 different types of communication styles. You have your analytical, which is sometimes called a thinker. You've got direct, which many times is called a driver. You've got the expressive personality, and they sometimes are very intuitive. And then you have that steady person, or sometimes that's called amiable. Each of us have our preferred style of communication. But as a supervisor, a good communicator should attempt to use all 4 styles depending on the individual they're communicating with. As a supervisor, it's important to know your agent's preferred style so that they can understand when you're communicating with them. They can also buy into what you're sharing with them. An example might be if you know someone is analytical, put some numbers behind what you're telling them. If you know somebody is direct, don't beat around the bush, just tell them what you need. And if it's somebody that is very intuitive or expressive, make sure that when you talk to them, you're not talking to them in a dull way. Get them excited, get them engaged in the communication so they feel a part of the business. Bruce, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that this is extremely important because actually the way people connect with each other as we'll see later in some of the slides, is key to their feeling part of the organization. In other words, just think about yourself. The more you feel understood and that your boss gets you, the more you're going to feel part of the organization, the more you're going to be influenced by that person, and the more you're going to be a contributing part of that organization. So these are areas that oftentimes people ignore or try to gloss over. But in other cases, by actually having people take the test to find out where they are, doing the test themselves, and really learning how to communicate with others in a really effective way influences their daily interactions as well as their coaching interactions, etc. So very, very important area here, Dee.
But I'm going to turn everything over to Debbie.
Thank you. What we're going to do over the next few slides is really discuss the various roles of the supervisor in a bit more detail and how that relates to their direct responsibilities, which is their agents. The first slide that we have here is a snapshot of a survey benchmark portal completed called One Agent Voices. Includes input from well over 5,000 agents over a couple of years in North America. So as you can see here, the key elements of agent satisfaction are supervisors, since they're really the key to really what we refer to as happy contact centers. The supervisor style, as you can see on here, scored the highest of all 18 categories. Where you can see above, there were a total of 76 questions. These are just broken down by category here. So the more the supervisors really are aligned with the interests and well-being of the agent, the better the call center really is going to do. And as you can also see at the top in the green, that the sense of belongingness is also ranked very high on a list of the categories. So really, when we're talking about agent satisfaction, it's not just a nice thing to have anymore. It really is an essential metric that corresponds to really a more pleasant place to work and a more productive place to work as well. Obviously, impact, there's a large impact to turnover, which we'll get into here in a minute. It costs much more, as we all know, to hire a new agent rather than just having the agents that you've already trained. So retaining agents is definitely one of the key positions that a supervisor has. And you can see in the little cartoon below that that's one method of keeping them chained to their desk, not one that obviously we would want to use, but it does explain, I think, the importance of how it is a necessary thing in keeping agents once they're hired and trained rather than starting fresh. In a lot of situations, it can cost the company $5,000 to $10,000 more to have to go out and actually recruit and hire and train new agents. So it really is a huge part of the supervisor responsibility to keep those. Supervisor needs to know really at all times what the turnover rate is and how costly that is actually to the team. What are some of the main reasons that they're leaving? It's usually a great idea for human resources to do exit interviews so they could determine why agents are actually leaving, because in a lot of situations, it can be related directly back to the supervisor. So you need to know what the key drivers are to team and individual satisfaction and really strive to meet that. They need to have their own strategy within their own unit for retaining agents. And really, it's a good idea to develop an individual retention strategy for each of the team members, since everyone, as we know, is just a bit obviously different. Just a few examples on here on this page, really, of why agents leave. And I know we've all heard the saying before, as far as, you know, employees don't leave companies, they leave supervisors or managers sometimes. And unfortunately, that can hold true, which is really why it's important to have a really in-depth touch points with your agents at all times. Another reason, they just don't feel like they were treated or valued, which again can come from who they're directly reporting to. As far as career potential, I think that ties back to, do you have development plans for the individuals within your units? and have you actually kind of personalize those to each person to find out really what they want as far as advancement. Another one, the work schedule doesn't fit my family life. Again, this can change with the type of business that you manage, but supervisors need to be aware of the fact that they do have an outside life, and if at all possible, try and work with them, with time off or a different schedule. And then the last one, I think that we've seen that one grow a bit. The technology at my desk is not functional for getting answers to my callers, yet I'm held accountable for average handle time. So, if you have agents coming to you as a supervisor or manager and they have technology issues, you need to really make sure you're getting to the bottom of it. The last one, I think what I've seen, I know over the years, is if they do not have the proper technology to answer the question or it's moving slow, it can really create some anxiety for the agents. One of the biggest, one of the most important skills really a supervisor must possess is around motivating agent. It really is a critical piece of coaching. There are many different motivational techniques, obviously, for keeping the staff happy to be part of the call center. And as I said before on the prior page, everyone's different. So the type of motivation that works best is probably going to vary by individual. Supervisor really should understand and be able to effectively use what technique they feel is best suited for that person or possibly for that team. Establish really principles of how to best recognize and reward individuals and teams. Not everyone wants to be announced in front of everyone if they've, received a complaint letter or they've made an accomplishment. Some actually get embarrassed. So it's a really good idea, I think, up front to know your agents and know how they best would like to be recognized. Really identifying ways to encourage learning and having fun at the same time. And then engaging agents, this last one is very important. And process improvement recommendations, really it shows that you value the work they do and acknowledge they're the experts. Really, they're the first line on the phone of the connection with the customer. A lot of times, I think this one is we have websites where we can go in or links to recommend process improvements, which is great. But as a supervisor, they need to make sure they're really kind of listening to that individual up front as well, instead of just directly referring them elsewhere. Making sure that they're setting realistic targets for the individuals. I think if we set targets that are out of reach, they tend, again, to leave, unfortunately. And as I said before, making sure we're equipping them to do the job with the right tools, not just technology, but support to make sure that someone's there to answer their questions, to help them through a process they may not understand. And I think, Rich, you had some comments here around gamification.
Yes, actually, one of the things to keep in mind here is that gamification is one of those new words. If anybody's not familiar with it, then there are other resources that we have, or you can get in contact with us directly. We have a call talk episode, in fact, on gamification coming up. And this is a way of really engaging your agents in a way that they like to be engaged, that makes use of and leverages knowledge of human interaction and also what it is that makes people want to come into work every day instead of saying, oh my God, I don't want to come into work, because it gets the adrenaline going, etc. So one of the things to think about is to be creative with regard to ways of motivating the team, ways of engaging them so that they really do feel like they are having fun, they're contributing something to society, and they're contributing to your company as well. One of the things that I was thinking about earlier as well is everyone on this call should know approximately what your cost of turnover is. In my experience, only about 10% of centers, in fact, do know what their cost of turnover is. What that cost is of recruiting, of onboarding, of training, etc., of paying people during that period of time. So really, that cost can add up to quite a bit of money. And when you've computed that, and then you look at your turnover, and you compare your turnover to the turnover for your industry, if it's higher, then there's an opportunity there to improve your operations on a human point of view, but also from a financial point of view. And when those two things come together, that is to say, improving your human performance at the same time that you're helping to save money for the company, that's always a beautiful thing. So one of the things that I would encourage everybody to do, a little bit of homework, if you don't know what it is, figure out what your cost of turnover is approximately, and then use that in determining what initiatives might be valuable to take, including something like gamification, to engage your people and to make it so that they're happier and less likely to leave. And this is obviously a tool in the hands of supervisors to make sure that it actually works. Supervisors, by the way, if you're considering gamification, they're your sort of pilot test group in terms of talking about it and figuring out whether it's going to work or not. These are the sorts of things that should never just be rolled out. They should be talked about ahead of time. And your supervisors, who are going to be sort of the keys in terms of making it work, should be your first port of call in terms of discussion and analysis of it. So those are some thoughts that I had with regard to gamification. Back to you, Debbie.
All right, thanks. Bruce, did you have anything to add, Dee?
Debbie, I also wanted to mention, earlier we were talking about training for supervisors. Motivation training is a very good investment. You know, there's many ways, and motivation changes year over year. So this is an area where you can plug in just a couple hours a month or whatever to get your supervisors in a room and talk about what motivates their people. This is a great way of actually engaging the agents in the business.
All right, thank you both. Moving on from motivation then, we have building a supportive team. Supervisors obviously are responsible for building and managing effective call center teams, so it really means they need to know the strengths and weaknesses of their agents in order to be able to appropriately coach them. Instructing and mentoring them, they could be formal or informal. I know a lot of times we have formal mentors, possibly outside of who they report to, which is great, but I think the supervisor really needs to be looked at as a mentor as well, possibly informally, and making sure that either they're, talking to the person about their interactions with the mentor, or doing some of that responsibility themselves, taking that on. Making sure they're rewarding and recognizing achievements. Again, going back to what I said earlier, just make sure that it's appropriate for the individual. And really ensuring that each member of the whole team is challenged as not just individuals, but as a whole group as well. Supervisors really need to know their teams well enough and decide what individuals might be best suited for a particular job or assignment. And keep in mind, all teams are a little bit different. Some teams are really just a group of people that report to the same person. They might work different hours. They, it might be a relatively large team. But then you also have cohesive units where each team member is responsible for really contributing their portion to the success of that team. So again, teams can vary based upon size, your hours of operation, and the type of calls that they take. But the job as a manager or a supervisor to model for them is to mentor them in the way they need to mentor the agents with care, concern, and really professionalism. Performance standards, I think we all know that every contact center has levels of performance that need to be met. Supervisors really are key in setting realistic goals and expectations, including, how they're measured, what are the critical components to the success of the center, and be able to tie that back. The goals really that they outline or align should align with corporate objectives as well, and you should be able to take those corporate objectives, maybe at kind of a high level, and bring it down to your team to let them know how you fit actually into that piece. It could be something around, retention. They want to retain an additional 5% of business, and really kind of let your team know how they fit into that picture with their goals as well. Utilizing standards and definitions, making sure that they're including applicable scoring and how that works, usually through the monitoring process. And really staffing and scheduling are also something that is very important to a successful call center supervisor. When I'm talking about that, normally workforce management goes into deeper detail on scheduling and staffing, but it is necessary for the actual supervisor to know how the process works, and again, how it can relate to their teams when they're asked certain questions, such as, for time off, leaving early, that sort of thing, so they can explain well why it cannot be available possibly. Communication, I think we all know, is key to everything in a contact center, and because of the fact that they are on the phones a lot, it can be difficult at times. It's obviously a critical skill, as we mentioned earlier on the list of responsibilities, especially for frontline supervisors in a call center. It's really important in help building and maintaining a positive working environment to make sure you're going to attract as well as retain your staff. One thing that we may not always think of in the way of communication, but making sure you're visible to your agents. Supervisors really need to be walking around on the floor to be seen. I don't mean the entire day, but you do need to make sure you're saying hello, you're complimenting agents on the spot if you hear something, or you're out there for assistance so they know that you have the knowledge that's required to help them as well. Making sure that they're scheduling and maintaining team meetings and individual performance meetings is definitely key in communication. A lot of times I think these things get to where they're canceled easily and not rescheduled, which really does not sit well with the agents. So you always need to make sure those are scheduled ahead of time, and at all possible making sure those are maintained, or if not rescheduled, in the same time frame. Making sure you know how to tailor communication in some instances for individuals so they have a full understanding. I think all of us know in the workplace right now, we have different generations that we're working with. So keep that in mind when you are talking to possibly someone that's a baby boomer versus someone that's a millennial. The conversation of how you're explaining something might need to be catered or be a little bit different. So really, everyone needs to feel recognized and feel appreciated. Bruce, did you or do you have anything to add around the communication piece?
I would just say that this is key. It ties into what you both have been talking about earlier and what I mentioned with regard to understanding your own communication style and understanding communication style of others. With regard to what you were just saying, Debbie, with regard to different generations, there's a lot that's been written and actually that we have produced in terms of content with regard to different, communicating with different types of age groups in the call center. And in fact, one of the things that we recommend is that when you have a communication that needs to go out, sometimes it's something that's coming through from on high and that you have to kind of figure out how to communicate to everyone else. Reread whatever it is that you're about to send out by email 3 different times at least, okay, depending on how many different types of groups you have in your call center. How will it play to a boomer type of audience? How will it play to a millennial type of audience? Now we've got the Gen X's coming in. So just think about the people in your center and what you know about them and how they're going to react and how you're going to actually get their buy-in. This will pay dividends if you do that. And you'll also become a master communicator in terms of your people and your operation. So that's my one thought.
All right, thank you.
There is something I'd like to add here.
Sure.
If you're in an organization that has multiple supervisors, and you have to communicate something out to the agents, you want to make sure that the communication among the supervisors is consistent. So one of the best practices that I've seen work very, very well is to develop talking points and then have every supervisor use those same talking points when they are communicating. And if they're communicating, say, in a team meeting, that's what they would use. But then they should probably go back one-on-one with their agents. And that's where you can really tie in that individual, whether they be a millennial, whether they be someone that is analytical. Tie it back to how that person receives and understands information.
Thank you. Great ideas, definitely. The next slide is one that I'm actually pretty passionate about. Supervisor time with their team. This kind of has fluctuated, I think, over time as far as how it is viewed. You just have to take a look at this one and realize that the purpose of a frontline supervisor should be placed on their agents. If they're pulled in other directions other than spending time with their team, it's not likely that the team's going to perform to the best of their ability. So in looking at this, as you can see, the time spent as far as with the supervisor, with the team, really does fluctuate quite a bit, as you can see on here. So really try and limit the amount of work that's designated to supervisors. If it doesn't directly involve their team, we'll see a lot of supervisors involved in projects, or they might be spending so much time on something like FMLA that HR is mandating as well, that has to be documented thoroughly. There are many other things as well that they could be working on, and it just takes time away from spending it with their teams, getting to know them. And as you look at that list of responsibilities, it's huge. So trying to really keep on target with that listing rather than adding more onto their plate. The other thing I did want to mention here was making sure that you're kind of constantly looking at your supervisor to agent ratio. Depends on really the type of calls, the type of support the supervisor has as far as a team lead, but look at those to make sure you're not really either too low or too high. 8 to 12 is a good number. That's just an average, though. Again, that can kind of fluctuate depending upon what type of calls they're taking or what kind of other support the supervisor may have as well.
Debbie, I'd like to add something here.
Sure.
You know, a lot of times you hire those good quality supervisors and they are dedicated to their people, but they also want to show their leadership skills by being involved in as many projects as they can. So make sure you look at that, because I remember when I had supervisors reporting to me, they would get the work done, but they may be working late hours at night or coming in on the weekends. And unfortunately, over time, they burn out. So it's important to watch the, like you said, the ratio of agents to supervisors, but also what are you putting on their plate?
Very good points. Thank you. Yeah, we've definitely have seen that over the years. Obviously, another key point here to be made as far as the supervisor relationship with the agent is around active listening. Really a way of listening and responding that requires certain behaviors of the listener to focus on making the speaker feel that you're really hearing them, you're not just looking at them, and by improving mutual understanding before moving to action. So really active listening is the greatest skill of all, particularly when you're in coaching sessions and asking for feedback, I think, from the agents. So I want to play a little clip from a video for you. Not sure if all of you watched the show or not, but even if not, I think you'll get the purpose behind it.
Believe this.
Why did you do this, Allie? This is terrible.
Oh, great!
This is Michael's giraffe. He's crying now. Why did you do this?
Cause.
Cause is not an answer.
Active listening.
Ray, that doesn't work.
It works. I just use it on the worst kids in the neighborhood.
Would you look at this. Look what she
Just
did.
try it. Try it.
No, Ray.
I'll
it's
do it.
a-
You want me to do it?
No,
I'll do
no,
it.
no, no. Okay. Allie, let's talk about what you did.
I don't want to talk.
Are you feeling angry?
Reflect back.
You're angry.
Yes.
Okay. But it's not okay to rip up toys when we're angry.
Judgmental.
You are angry because...
Because it used to be your toy.
Oh,
Yes. I don't like Michael and Jeffrey.
I see. You think that Mommy and Daddy pay too much attention to Michael and Jeffrey.
Ray, okay, I was handling this.
They get everything.
Right, and you're upset because we gave them your old giraffe.
I still liked it.
But you weren't playing with it.
But that doesn't matter, though, because it was still yours. And you're mad because we gave it to Michael without asking you, right?
Right.
Well, Mommy and Daddy made a mistake. And everybody makes mistakes, right, Mommy?
Yes.
Do you feel better now, Allie?
Yes, can I have the giraffe?
Well, it's broken, honey.
I know, I want to try to fix it for Michael.
Uh-huh. They're sweet.
Thank you, Daddy.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Can't believe it. It's pretty amazing. You did it.
Anything else need taken care of while I'm around here?
No.
What? What's the matter?
Nothing with you, obviously.
Don't go by me. I'm a natural. Where you get it?
Oh, look.
What?
Act so proud of yourself. Listen, if I hadn't dragged you to that stupid class, you'd still be standing there going, hey, no TV.
You're feeling inadequate because I mastered it before you.
Oh, don't give me that active listening crap. Where do you get off listening to me?
Never happened again.
As you can see that if Raymond can use active listening skills, I think we all can as well. It is actually a funny video. However, mastering active listening is really an essential part of being a successful supervisor. So really in closing, the key active listening skills that are really needed to develop and to really continuously, I think, work on being attentive, asking open-minded questions, asking probing questions, making sure you're clarifying. It's always a good idea to go back and make sure that you restate to make sure you've heard it correctly, paraphrasing, making sure you're in tune to reflect feelings, and then summarizing as well. So quite a few different steps that go into coaching, obviously, that need to always be kept in mind. So each of these skills really work well, I think, together to ensure that the agent's heard and that you really have a genuine interest in what they're saying. And this possibly could be one of the best tools you can have in your supervisor toolbox. And the last slide here I really like. One of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say, which I think we've all been in positions before that we can relate to that. And with that, I will turn it back over to Bruce.
Okay, thank you very much. And we can go to the next slide, Debbie. And we apologize for the technical difficulties on the video there. But we'll get to the Q&A in just a second. So please type in your questions. We've already received some and would be happy to hear from more. You know, I think it's really important for those listening to the webinar. Many of you are managers who have supervisors reporting to you directly or indirectly. It's important to realize that if supervisors are the key to performance for the call center, which is the title of this show, really you become the keys to the keys. So you're the ones who are the mentors of those wonderful mentors that we have in the call center, and really it's by showing the right example and really modeling the right behaviors that you are going to have a really crack team of supervisors working with you. Or if you're a supervisor yourself, you can take the ideas that are here, integrate them into how you work. If you have other supervisors in your center as well, share this information with them, and they also will become top performers and help your organization to do better and better. So I think those are really important concepts, and thank you again to Debbie and Dee for those. Next slide. Remember to take advantage of your PACE membership to get the discounts and a free first on-demand course from Benchmark Portal. As you can see, one of those courses, in fact, is a supervisor certification course. So please take advantage of that. Just get in touch with us directly. And then next slide, with regard to training and credentialing yourself and your colleagues, these are among the most high ROI things you can do for your center and among the best things that you can do in terms of morale and proving that you care about your agents and your supervisors and your other managers. So these are things that are very important and can help you in turnaround situations or to improve a center that's already performing really well. So next slide, let's turn to questions. We've received some already, so I'll go through those. Also, feel free to email me at brucebelfiore@benchmarkportal.com if you have a question that doesn't get answered during the show. Okay, so let me take the first question. Actually, this is from Jason. And he is actually sort of doubling down on something that Debbie spoke to, which is, or actually Dee did, with regard to organizational structure. What are the staffing benchmarks for having a center director, manager, supervisors, agents? In other words, what are the ratios, I think is what Jason's saying, that we should have? And Debbie, I think you said that you thought 8 to 12 was a good number in most cases. Is that correct?
Right, that would be the agent to supervisor ratio that we see most frequently. Again, depending on the call type, it definitely can vary, and on how much assistance that supervisor has.
And I would add to that probably also the amount of turnover and the tenure of your agents. So the more tenured your agents, the less they need the supervision. So you may see things stretch out to even 15 and higher in terms of the ratio. If you have high turnover, fast growth, less tenured or less capable agents, then you're going to be moving toward the bottom of that range. So that's a great question, Jason. Hopefully that answers it for you. Dee, did you have anything to add to that?
I think the only other thing I would say is, if you're looking at a director, how many supervisors may report to them? It really does depend on what the business model looks like. But again, it's important that the call center be looked at as the real important part of the business. Oftentimes I've seen a director have the call center as a sideline versus a main line of the business. Mm-hmm. And that typically doesn't give you the leverage you need to make a difference with the customers.
Great point. Great point. Okay, very good. The next question is from Marco, and he says, do you believe there is a certain format for team huddles that supports the communication themes you are stating? Great question. I know that in terms of team huddles, Debbie, you've spoken on this before, so you might want to address this first.
Sure. Yeah, I think actually with the team huddles, it can go two ways. I mean, you have the ones that are more structured and not necessarily as structured. I think the main thing on those is to have somewhat of a structure. First of all, making sure you're having them consistently. You're going to have them twice a week for 15 minutes, make sure that happens. And the other thing I would say is to really establish upfront what you want to be on there. It doesn't just have to be giving out information. It could be awards, recognition around birthdays, anniversaries with the company, a lot of different things. Try and get the agent's feedback on and establishing really what they would be interested in. But probably the most important thing is if someone asks a question during the huddle, it really is a great idea to write it on there and make sure that you come back with a response. It really holds you accountable for making sure you're getting back to not just the person that asked the question, but everyone else as well.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Dee, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I would just go back to one of the statements I made when we were reviewing the communications. If it's something that needs to be communicated across a department and you've got multiple supervisors that are delivering a message in these team huddles, I recommend using the talking points.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, it's a sort of communications calibration. How about that?
Yes, that sounds good.
Do calibration, right? And I think what you're saying is here, do some calibration when it comes to communication. That's a great point. Great point. We should
One thing, Bruce, I would say on the as far as the huddles go, is it's really like everything else. If you start it, don't let it fade away. Make sure that you keep up with it and are being consistent to at least try it for several months before changing or giving up on anything.
Okay, very good. Let's see. Another question is, do you think all coaching sessions should be documented?
I would
This is
say
Dee.
yes, and yes, definitely. Making sure that really you're documenting. I think one of the most important takeaways there is to document what actions you would like them to take and be specific about it. You know, I want you to improve your average handle time by 5 seconds. That's not really coaching. That's just what you want them to do. Explain how they need to go about doing it and make sure all of that is documented very thoroughly.
Okay.
And I agree 100% with what Deb said. And I think too, part of that is getting a buy-in from the agent on those coaching sessions. If they're documented, make sure they put their thoughts and their feedback along with your coaching notes, so you can hold them accountable. But not only that, they feel like they are a part of their own performance evaluation.
Right. Oh, that's so important. And then actually this kind of bleeds into some of our coaching sessions that we've had too, in terms of call talk and these webinars, et cetera. And so, yeah, very good point. In fact, a lot of people would say, you know, make sure every coaching session starts with listening to a call and asking the agent first what their thoughts are before you even share your own thoughts. But we're getting into another area here, so we've got a lot to cover on our own. Here's a question from Chris. What's your advice on supervisors for at-home agents? I suppose the question here is there any different skills or any different characteristics that you would look for in terms of a successful supervisor for at-home agents?
This is Dee. I can tell you that a supervisor of at-home agents needs to simulate an in-office environment. I actually rolled out a program at one point of bringing in nothing but home agents, and I had a supervisor that managed that team. I brought someone in that had that experience. If you remember earlier, I said when you're hiring, sometimes you hire to a specific skill. Well, that's what we did. And he was great. Not only did he make contact on a regular basis throughout the day with his at-home agents, but when we were talking about motivation, if we had a food day and we were bringing in pizza for everyone, he would actually have pizza delivered to his home agents. So they felt a part of the team. They were not somebody off forgotten. He would also have them come in occasionally to meet the team. Every team meeting was done by a WebEx so that they could see that they were part of the team and hear the rest of the team. So there are specific skills that go with managing home agents, but it is a very easy transition if you've got the right person leading that team.
Okay, very good. Debbie, anything further to say on that?
No, I completely agree. I think it definitely takes a supervisor that is very organized as well. like Dee said, just to make sure nothing's falling through the cracks, that you're constantly keeping all of them in the loop of what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, let's see. There's another couple of things here. One is, how are bots changing the future of supervisors for the call center? Excellent question with regard to what's going to be happening in the future. And I might start with that just to say that it is going to change things, because bots are going to be, taking care of more of the easy questions. So you're going to be supervising more in terms of knowledge content and a little bit less, relatively speaking, in terms of compliance and adherence to policies. When your agents are getting more challenging but also more interesting calls, they're less likely to get lazy on some of the things that they may in the past have gotten dinged on. They're going to have to be on top of their game. They're going to be a more high quality professional, actually, at the end of the day. So I think as we think going forward, what's going to be happening is, there's going to be these calls that are, or these inquiries that are going to be handled differently and without human intervention more going forward. Number two, where the human intervention comes in, it's going to be assisted by suggested answers and resources, et cetera, from the bots. And so in terms of our being able to select for, train, and skill the people who are going to be our supervisors, it's going to be more challenging for us as well. But it's also going to be more exciting. So with that, let me ask Dee and Debbie if they have any further thoughts on that.
I think my only thought is, really one question regarding that is the agents do get involved in more complicated situations or additional questions, to make sure you're keeping an eye on your metrics, such as your average handle time, because odds are that's going to be changing as they become more involved in deeper questions.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and this kind of reminds me of back when we first started doing the online and the ability to pay using a phone and all that. As Debbie just said, things will get more complicated, but also make sure that you're open to looking at the processes on a regular basis so that they are being delivered appropriately from the bot.
Okay, very good. Let's see, we're right at the top of the hour, so we'll have to cut it off here. But there is one, Sal made a comment here that I think it's important to share. And he says, I think it's also important to note that if turnover in your center is high, but it's leading to employee promotion within the company, this can be a good thing. And this says your supervisors, managers are doing their job and mentoring the employees. So in those situations, which I guess is a situation with Sal, basically the contact center is the point of entry for bringing in new people, making their first experience an experience where they're in contact with the customers, where they're dealing with questions on the products, and where they're learning the culture of the company so that they can then move on to other areas. That is a kind of turnover that can be positive for the company. Absolutely. So good point that you made there, Sal. Any final thoughts from Dee or Debbie? If not, then we'll wrap things up.
Oh, thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. And we thank you very much for attending, and hope you have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.